Okay, so welcome to Belfast Rail. I'm Jonathan Watson. Today's guest is Bill Wolsey. Uh, Bill, you're an entrepreneur, you're owner of the Banchar company, is that right? Which includes
That'll
over.
do.
Okay. Um, so you're also awarded an OBE in 2014 for services to business and hospitality as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you also you work for two charities, Start 360, which helps young people and disadvantaged adults, and MyWare, is that right?
That's my wife's charity.
Your wife's charity, and that's for awareness with regards to the myasthenia.
Myasthenia gravis. Sorry,
sorry.
I'm getting confused. My own myasthenia gravis. I suffer from
Okay.
myasthenia gravis. So it's like multiple sclerosis.
Okay, and you also once played for or scouted and played for Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome to Belfast Rail, and thank you for coming along today.
Pleasure.
So basically, let's see. So let's go start off. We're here today in your hotel, the Merchant Hotel. This is in the Belfast Cathedral Quarter. Going back to the start, what was your early years like growing up in 1950s Belfast?
Fun. I can only remember having a good time. Come from a solid working class family. We lived in Ballysillan. Similar background to most people in there. There wasn't much work. So for most of my life up to the age of about 15, 16, my dad would probably have lived away maybe half of that time, there was no work. So he worked in London and sent the money home.
Okay.
The ritual was the telegram coming through the door with the money on a Friday. Maybe the difference between myself and other kids in the area were my parents, who were old school socialists, politically aware, and constantly reminding us of what we should do and shouldn't do when it came to voting, and giving us a moral compass. That was probably the biggest difference between us. Family were interested in, my dad boxed for Ireland, played football at a high level, in politics, and my mother could hold as her own on all those subjects and a lot more. She was a driving force, probably the same as lots of families. So happy childhood.
And you obviously mentioned your parents were socialists. How did their, obviously that was part of their views. How did their beliefs and views then shape you who you are today? Like how?
Well, they definitely gave me a moral compass.
Okay.
And from a very early age, I remember my father coming home and throwing his toolkit down and saying, about if you stick 12 monkeys in the Union Jack, they'd get elected. And you pay attention to what's important in life. It's never flags. Yeah. And my mother would say, as myself and my two brothers were eating their breakfast, do you think it's fair if you lived in a country you can't have food? How come you can eat? Is that fair? And all I want to do is eat my breakfast. But eventually, and I've sort of early childhood memories that eventually when we got a television, that my mum would let me come down to watch Match of the Day if I hadn't fallen asleep. So that, but also of a memory of election time, and whenever the Labour Party won, I was always very, very happy, seeing these results. I didn't know why, but I knew my mum and dad would be really happy in this. So that's the early years, and then as you start to develop some degree of sophistication, you understand the point of view that they were coming from, and I understand their background. So I think now it's taught me how to treat people well, have respect, and on that simple basis we've been able to build a sizable company with huge staff retention.
Brilliant, no, excellent. And early on, before we started the interview, we were talking about school, about my experience and your experiences, and just to give people a kind of an idea, did you enjoy school? Was school something that you were particularly successful at, or how did you find your experience?
Yeah, the answer is yes and no. I enjoyed school, and I was completely unsuccessful at school, and I liked to muck about. The only thing I was really good at was football, and I listened to the teacher, but nobody could quite get my attention. I can give you an illustration of the surprise in my family when the 11 plus results came up. My dad decided he would open the envelope, and it was my dad, my mother and myself, and he opened the 11 plus results, and he said to me, like, bloody hell, you've passed, and so it wasn't an expectation, and I was horrified that I'd passed, because I didn't want to go to grammar school, and nobody could understand because my marks were always so bad. So that was a bit, where my schooling was. I refused to go to grammar school. I went to tech. In those days, in ancient times, you could go straight from primary school to tech if you got a certain pass level. And now, I repeated what I did in primary school. I was hopeless there. But now that I'm a lot older, three things that really interest me are history, art and music. And funny enough, when you went to tech, the three things they didn't teach you were history, art and music. We were taught how to be draftsmen, or metal workers, or carpenters, and that was the level of expectation that was put upon us. But those other subjects, which I really enjoy, were regarded as something that was far too high above the station of us.
More for like a kind of a upper class.
Yeah, more for the Malone Road crowd, the grammar schools. So there was a grammar school, so there was a management. There was the people like us who were carpenters and machinists, and then there was the people at the intermediate who were meant to fill white vans. That's the way our society worked, and there wasn't meant to be any movement between the three.
I know kind of what they call now social mobility.
Yeah.
So, going from that there, you mentioned in the opening of the interview, you played for Arsenal. You ended up having to withdraw from that. Can you tell us about playing for Arsenal and why obviously that career was cut short?
Well, I went straight from school to Arsenal, and it was an apprenticeship, and then that was going fine, and then I sort of had a dramatic loss of form, and I was seeing double, and I had a loss of strength, and I wasn't. They were trying to put weight on me, and obviously no, they couldn't put weight on me. I was losing weight, and so it was much harsher then than it would be now. I was cut, and my father was determined that I would serve an apprenticeship in printing. I would get my papers, so I became a compositor in printing, and it took about another 6 years for them to diagnose that I have had and still have myasthenia gravis.
Okay.
And which is eats away at your system, but on the back of that I've had 11 eye operations, all totally unnecessary. I've had my thymus taken out, but it's really, it can't be cured. Right. So I'm on a drug, which means I'm able to talk to you today.
Okay. So without that drug, then obviously
I would, when I was 50, when you sort of get your mid-40s, to say if it hasn't progressed, it won't be progressive, it'll stay at that level, but it came on me with a vengeance, and my weight dropped below 8 stone.
Okay.
And I couldn't really talk. I could talk for a little while, and then the muscles give up and you start to slur your words, and I was very ill.
Mm-hmm.
And the hospital then decided to put me on a different drug altogether, and that helped for a while. I would to take 2 of these tablets a day, and eventually I got up to 11, and I couldn't swallow. That's one of the things I see my head. So I became iller and iller, and then they put me on an experimental drug and then a steroid, and that turned my whole life around, and I'm here.
Good. And if I know it might be maybe a I don't know if it's an impossible question to ask or a possible question to get an answer to, but how going through that, like, how do you how do you get over it? How did you deal with those episodes where you were obviously, it was interfering with your life, it was getting in the way of what you were doing? How did you deal with that?
Well, it's a funny thing because I get asked a lot of questions about, you know, the whole football thing finished. You must have been shattered, and you know the effects it's had on your life. And it wasn't. I just thought it's something I have. I'll get on with it.
Yeah.
And I sort of look on it the basis that had I not had this illness, you know, my career could have gone a totally different direction, and I may not have met as many amazing people as I have. So I don't regard the illness as a friend, but I've no fear of it.
Yeah.
I just think that because of that, you know, I got it. Ultimately ended up in hospitality.
Yeah.
I ended up, you know, with the family I have and people I have, and I'm chatting the way to you.
Yeah.
So I just have the attitude, right, so how can I deal with it? Get on with it.
Yeah. It's just the road you were kind of pushed down, basically.
Yeah,
that's ultimately led to,
fate dealt me that hand, and by and large there were difficult moments, but you know, I go to hospital and I see kids with my illness,
Okay.
you know, who are in a really serious way, and I'm lucky for that mine has, you know, they've been able to contain my illness and I can move on. And I can still play football better than most people.
Excellent. So going and obviously we're in your hotel right now. How did you then get into the hospitality industry? I know you mentioned that you qualified as a printer. How did you go from being qualified as a printer to working within the industry, the hospitality industry?
Yeah. Well, there was primary school, then the tech, and then as a compositor and printing, and it was a rerun of the same episodes. Couldn't get my attention at school, pretty hopeless at school, hopeless at, from primary, hopeless at the tech. And then I got into printing, which I hated, and nobody could, you know, I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
And after I was then probably about 19, 20, I saw an advert in a paper lived in London at the time, that there was a night course at Westminster Catering College, and I thought I'll go and try that out. I to this day I don't know why I decided hospitality. So I used to start at 8, finish at 5, then get in the car, drive across London, and the course started at 7, and it finished at sort of 1 and 2 in the morning. You couldn't do that today because all the education cuts, despite all the politicians' promises. But when I was at the catering college, I did that for about 2 months, and I thought, this is just as bad as everything else. And then they sent me in block release, working in the industry, and an epiphany took place within me, and I enjoyed every moment of being in the industry. And from that moment, really, I became ambitious, probably for the first time in my life, apart from football. And eventually, you climb.
You wanted to do more.
You do one thing, you become a manager, you get a bit of money, and here we are today. It's been a sort of 42 year, 43 year. It hasn't been an overnight success, but the trick was finding something that I enjoyed.
Finding people would sometimes say find your passion kind of thing. So basically, I knew basically when you qualified as a printer, you pretty much, if I remember right, you resigned. Is that
on the day?
On the same day, so you got your qualification. Thank you very much, but no thanks.
I'm away, and nobody could believe it. Because compositing and printing were, next to prostitution, it was one of the longest running professions. And what I didn't know then, I just knew I wanted to get into something I enjoy. There was 40 compositors where I was working, and then there was probably about 70 people on the machines, and then 15 typesetters.
Right.
And inside 10 years, computers came along. That whole industry was decimated.
Right.
So from over 100 people doing a job, there was 4,
Right.
and a machine that was fully automated.
So you,
So my timing was good,
yeah.
but nothing to do. I had no foresight
Yeah.
what was coming, but that was an industry with high skills and very highly unionised,
Yeah.
and a lot of pride in what they did.
You say, just in previous interviews you mentioned you went to work in Pizza Hut, is that right?
Yeah.
Just I can imagine back then, because you said it would have been seen as a kind of a job for life. Did you ever get much kind of people going, were you crazy or?
Yeah,
or
my father.
Okay.
And everybody who worked with me in printing,
Yeah.
because I'd been at the catering college and I'd sort of kept that quiet as like a dirty secret, because the hospitality industry was not really thought of as a career. It was more a stepping stone, whereas I was a compositor that had some sort of gravitas attached to it, at least in the mind of the tradesman.
Yeah.
And I then had finished my course, and one of the places I went to work was the very first Pizza Hut in the UK, which was in an area called Islington in London. So I was one of their first employees, and I sort of enjoyed bits of it, but I only stayed for a few months, and then they moved me to another area in London to become an assistant manager. But I understood completely the systems they had in place, but it just did not suit my personality.
Yeah.
One of the things we had to watch, and don't forget this was over 40 years ago, was a film of the founders, and it was basically a fat American going through a wheat field, running his hand like a Timotei advert.
Okay.
And he turned to the camera, and there was myself and a Polish bloke and a fella from Iran and someone from France and someone from somewhere in Africa, and I don't think there was any English people at all there. And he said, I started off just like you, and I thought, no, you did not. And you had to stick to the company rule the whole time. There was no acceptance of the individual, and that didn't suit me. So I stayed, learnt their systems, understood how the business operated, and left and moved on. I'd become ambitious and hungry for knowledge about my industry.
And then, basically going from that there, you obviously I know you built up your knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
When did you decide I want to be my own boss? I've got enough here to go alone.
I worked for somebody who after a short period of time told me they were going bankrupt.
Okay.
And he had always been very straight and honest with me, and he was a real London geezer.
Right.
And this is this time when bombs were going off in London, but he had some, he loved everything to do with Ireland, and he said to me, look, I'm going to cut your wage in half, but I'll give you an opportunity. If you hit over a certain turnover, you keep 10% of everything you earn. And he had 12 places, and he chose 4 or 5 managers to give us this opportunity. And I asked him, what was the advantage to him? And he said, I'll go to the bank and I'm going to show them how I'm cutting my wage bill, and they may give me a lifeline. And at the time I lived in a flat with an Iranian bloke and a Polish fella. It was like, I couldn't swing a cat, and I would hardly pay the rent. And it was a big decision, but I did it. And I had seen earlier in my career a carvery, which 40 odd years ago was sort of revolutionary.
Yeah.
And I was working in a posh restaurant in Kensington, managing this for him, and it was rubbish. And I asked him, could I change it to carvery? And I did, and the place flew. Absolutely flew. I know now we have a full marketing department, and we understand customer profile, decor, music, food, how it all ties together. Then I just knew I'd be doing something that nobody else in the area was doing. and it sort of like tripled my wages, and on the back of that I had confidence that I might be able to do something else. And my mother and father had watched, and while they were still nervous of the hospitality industry, they wanted, and I wanted to return to Ireland, and we found a bar that had plummeted in price, and my mum and dad lent me their life savings, and I had about £3,000, £4,000 of my own, and fantastic reference from this employer because I left them a really profitable business, and the bank lent me the money, and that was the first place that I'd ever worked for myself, and it was a challenge.
How did you've obviously got the employer you work for gave you that opportunity, and then you had the other opportunity from your parents giving you their life savings. For a lot of people, it's a lot of some people maybe go it's a challenge to relish. For other people it would be like a lot of pressure. How did you kind of, what people would say, hold your nerve? How did you kind of like put that pressure aside and go, right, this is how I can make this work? Or
because there wasn't pressure.
Okay.
I was too young to understand.
Okay.
I'm 22 then. I knew damn all about anything. I had this success, and I thought, this is I'll make a success of this pub. And if I had sat back and analysed what I could have lost for my parents, I probably would never have done it. But I was arrogantly confident, I suppose. And the pub that we took over, the reason that it dropped massively was because the boys were running it.
Okay.
Let's just call them that.
Yeah.
And nobody would touch it. So I spotted the bargain, but we didn't ask why it was going to be a bargain. And it was a sort of difficult year, but A, I was never going to pay protection, and B, it was my mother and father's, every penny of their money was wrapped up in this. And my dad, he was a maintenance fitter, my mum did sort of menial jobs, and we all worked in the bar, and my dad sort of would repair toilets and things like that, and then eventually he did the graveyard shift, and he was a real character, and he believed, and I believed, my mother believed, that there are far more good people who would empathise with what we're doing than the thugs who were trying to extract from us. So we were told not to let this person in and that person in prior to opening, because they were into all sorts of extortion, drugs, this, that and the other. We decided to let them all in and bar them for our rules, which was completely the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And but if you're too young to remember, but 40 years ago, there wasn't much point in phoning the police.
Yeah, it was the height of the troubles.
It was the height of the troubles. So you had to, unlike most people, we particularly my dad, when he got to know people with boys who'd been involved, he would say, this is all a lot of bollocks.
Yeah.
Catholics live in the exact same slums as we are, and on a face-to-face meeting, these blokes who are regarded as thugs, are not, and they understood, and we never really had, those people who liked what we were doing stayed, and eventually the ones who were, just difficult, they eventually stopped coming in. We ran we sponsored local football teams, boxing teams. There was an elderly lady who was robbed. We did a fundraiser for her right from the earliest days. I would show her how much money we were taking in, what I was paying out, and how little we were left with. So I'd sort of taught anybody who worked with me, so we weren't making a fortune, and we were putting back in the community, and the community rallied around us, and we turned that bar around, and it wasn't just that easy.
Yeah.
There was very, very scary, difficult moments. I mean, police came to us and offered us the chance to take personal protection weapons, and
Right.
we wouldn't touch any of that.
Yeah.
We just avoided all that, and we reasoned with reasonable people, and we moved on. And my philosophy then on the bar was that I can do better. I can supply the customers with a better product and a better surrounding, and that turned out to be the right thing to do then. It's the right thing to do now. It's just it's moved on. Nothing particularly clever.
If I can ask, obviously, like, it's hard for people to imagine now, or maybe some people can. If the troubles in Northern Ireland, I know in different areas there's people wanting tax and rackets. How, when those people came looking for a slice of your earnings, hard-earned cash, how did you, if I can ask, how did you deal with that? How did you like reason with them or try and?
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into this too much, but what I will say is that it's never quite, in a lot of cases, it's never quite, will you listen, pay me this.
Yeah.
It's more a case of, look, could be trouble in here, why don't we just take over to security and you pay us,
Right, okay.
whatever. And we refused on all cases, and we tried to make the bar as welcoming to everybody. For instance, now this doesn't seem like much, but we were way, way, way ahead of our time on this sort of thing. And again, comes back to my parents' point of view and where they were. At the end of the night, we had lived in London. At the end of the night in bars in London, a live music venue or not, nobody ever played the national anthem, ever. We said, we're not playing the national anthem at the end of the night. And they said, are you mad? There'll be a riot. We said, right, we're not playing. No band will ever play if they don't play it right. No bands. We held our ground. Eventually people did play for us, and there was no riot. And when it came to July, this is 40 odd years ago, when they said they were putting flags, I said, no flags in my bar. And the story was one particular thug, and I knew who he was, and he obviously knew I knew who he was. And he said, look, we've got to. I said, no, under no circumstances. And then I knew I'd won the argument when he said to me, if you don't let me put a flag, you'll fuck up my zigzag completely. I thought, is he serious? And we didn't. And what happens in our little province is that there are far more reasonable people. We all know what those things represent, and we started to get, the clientele change. Some of the boys stayed with us and were very, very welcome. Some of them came to work for me. One of them still works for me.
Excellent.
Right, so we were ahead of our time on those points that the politicians have had to be dragged, tooth and nail, fighting and kicking against. And we give better service. We improved the product. We got rid of the microwave. We started to do our own, burger and chips.
Freshly cooked.
Yeah. I brought in the very first coffee machine. Now, there'd been milk bars before. Now, admittedly, we only served tea on it, but it was there. We were constantly trying to improve.
So it was basically you raised the bar above what they were normally used to, and how you even came across. You're like, this is our way, but you're welcome to be part of it.
Yeah.
And that kind of won over.
Yeah.
And I said, people are human beings at the end of the day, even though they might be caught up in a rhetoric or a kind of a viewpoint, that you kind of appeal to.
Well, my father could quote that he knew their fathers, and he, they knew he worked in the unions, and everything we were saying we believed in, and people saw that.
Yeah, it was genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No.
And we got a bar with interesting people, you know, clean, tidy, safe.
Yeah.
You know, and it was.
A lot of an atmosphere.
Yeah.
I'm just going to check just to make sure
Yeah.
everything's. That's good. That's okay. It's still. Sorry, I just
No problem.
panicked if it was it's off. Okay. So because I know some of the questions are getting answered as we go along, which is good.
Are my answers too long?
No, they're
Okay.
fantastic. They're great. Okay, Bill. So you start off basically with the one pub in Ireland. When obviously you got that up running, being successful. How then did you go from one pub to multiple businesses?
The second pub that I took over, the lady who did the cleaning was upstairs and had left the keys in the back of the door, and she'd had an argument with her, been separated from her husband. He came up and locked the door and poured petrol over them both, set fire to them both. They both died in a fire, and nobody would touch the bar. And I thought, well, it can't be any more difficult than what I've taken over. So I took over that bar and made a success of that bar. And I then thought that, I have people who worked with me in the first bar come up to the second one. And some stayed. But what I did notice is that we were able to hold people, and people who were better than me. And so there was one person who worked for me, and in our industry, a lot of people stay with you for life, which is what we want. But a lot of people, the driving force is to become their own boss.
Yeah.
So I'd recognised the talent that this person had a conversation with him and said, well, look, if I could find somewhere for you, I bought it, I've come up with a simple formula. I'll charge you 10% of whatever it cost me to buy and fit out. So it's 250,000, your rent's 25,000. This is what I think the turnover will be.
Yeah.
And I agreed that with the potential tenant. And I said, so if it hits over this turnover, your rent stays. If it hits below it, you stay on as a manager, so you've nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And it was a sort of really honest, open way and simple way, which is always the best way of moving, any business forward.
Yeah.
And on that basis, I was able to build up quite a few bars. Some we own, and others are rented from us by individuals who are, more talented than me.
So it's pretty much giving people a chance to grow their own business.
Yeah.
But with obviously like a nice safety net kind of.
Yeah.
In there.
If we, that person and I had cocked up the market that we were aiming for, and the customers didn't come in, then I took on that because they just stayed as a manager. Their wage was guaranteed.
Excellent. So basically, from there, you then eventually got into hotels. How did that transition happen? Was it a natural opportunity that came up, or was it something you thought I could do? Was there a gap in the market you seen that you thought I could do really good at that?
Yeah. At this stage, it was it was we rather than me.
Okay.
So there was a few directors and had come up with this. My two sons worked for me, and we had a bar in Lisbon Road called Tattoo, which is, did really well, fantastically well. And we could see there was more and more tourists come. There had been a period where if you found an American, you brought him home and showed him off to your friends and say, look who I found dandering around the city. But they were starting to come in numbers, and we felt that we were too dependent on alcohol.
Yeah.
And alcohol would be the next battleground, one of the battlegrounds, because of the health implications, and we were far too dependent on it. We had quite a big food operation, and hotels was an industry we wanted in. There was other really good hotels, and not decrying them, but they were sort of, you would get a man with a salmon jumper tied around his neck and loafers, and a sort of Jim Wells hairstyle,
Yeah.
And we thought Belfast was one of the youngest cities in Europe, fantastically well-educated population who would appreciate something that said something about them. And we found the merchant, this headquarters of the Ulster Bank, property people didn't want it listed. We thought it would work well as a hotel, and we bought this. We brought in a manager who understood the business, and we had an advantage over other hoteliers in that we came from a very good ground floor operation. We know how to operate bars, clubs, restaurants. That's what we do, and we were able to put those skills with a hotel bedroom operation, and that was 14 years ago. Now any modern hotel you look at is doing their best to have a good ground floor operation. So by fluke we were ahead of our time in that one. And we went over to London and looked at the managing director of the Savoy Claridge's Connaught, and the Barclay was from Northern Ireland. She was really gracious and let us shadow them, learn bits and pieces, and we've moved on. And this hotel is now one of the UK and Ireland Hotel of the Year. Never come to Ireland before. We've picked up awards. We've had people work for us and gone on to open their own bars. New York, Boston, Paris. We've people go on to manage some of the best hotels in the world. Their bar operations.
And the hotel, it opened in 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just again for maybe people who are watching who are not from Belfast, we didn't really have anything like this here. I know when I was preparing for this interview, the Northern Ireland Tourist Board didn't really believe in what you were wanting to achieve.
Yeah, we went along. I've never let them forget it either,
Yeah.
but they said it wouldn't work.
Okay.
They said the prices we were charging for the rooms and what we would have to charge for the cocktails nobody would pay that money. It was a very short meeting, a fiery meeting, and we told them we needed to charge this because we were putting into the business, and we were confident, and we decided to stay away. We didn't need it. We would just do it ourselves. We didn't need any grants. We wouldn't got any anyway, and we had faith in our own ability to operate an operation such as we're sitting in now.
And building something like this, or if you have a vision such as the Merchant Hotel, I know sometimes when people are trying to build something, unfortunately, there's obstacles in the way, like the tourist board saying we're not going to, we don't believe in that. How did you avoid falling into any kind of compromise pitfalls, like maybe having to cut back on what you envisioned the merchant would ultimately look like or be?
We didn't cut back.
Okay.
That's simple. We don't spend money foolishly, but we knew what level the design had to be. We knew that how we needed to spend more money than anybody else does on training.
Yeah.
We need to get that service level right, and I particularly knew from experience from that very first bar that I opened, that if you get the local population emphasise with what you're doing, and they have a pride in where they're going, the product that they're receiving, the service that they get, that's how you build a business.
Okay.
And we stuck to a format that has worked for us and proved to be right.
Excellent. I'm just going to check the age again. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's okay. That's good. That's grand. Let's see. Okay. So basically on that, you're about staff. I know myself. You have a great reputation when it comes to that. You care for your employees, and you mentioned a lot of them went on to start their own businesses or become managers in hotels. Obviously having a good workforce is essential. What would you say would be the main keys to, or what would be the main keys to success with your business or any business in general?
Well, the staff obviously that's what you're touching on, are hugely important, the most important thing. Actually, by the way, you'd be surprised how many restaurants and bars in this city are run by people who've trained with us.
Right.
But the staff retention comes from two main areas, I think three main areas. One is they have to respect the people they work for, and that has to be earned. So I think that, you know, we work hard on that, we put back into the community. We're always around, you know, we work more hours than our staff do. There's an understanding that, but fundamentally they know that we want them to do better.
Yeah.
And we have a sort of philosophy here which covers two areas. One is ambition, and some people's ambition is to work in our stores or be a barman or be a chef, and that's where they want to stay all their life because they enjoy doing that, and they must be given the exact same respect as to those who are huge and ambitious and want to move on. You know, that's an absolute must.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we have a talk where we say to our staff, whether it's here, pizza restaurant, bar, whatever it is, that a customer can come in and look at the surroundings where we are. You know, there's gilt lights, chandeliers, gold leaf. Customers will come in and see that and will look at that and forget about that because it will just blend. But people always remember people.
Yeah.
So if you can move and do something that customers don't expect, they will remember you and they will remember our hotel. So you're hugely important to our business. So there are those sort of factors. And the other thing that we do right, that I did from the very first bar, was education. So if anybody wants to learn about the business, we have no problem in showing any member staff how profitable the place is or not profitable the place is that they work, how much we allocate the wages, how much we allocate to what the product costs then, light, heat, electricity, marketing, and what our bottom line is. And once you educate, you know, a lot of people who work for themselves hide all their profits. You know, their ambition is to wear a Slazenger jumper, drive a BMW 5-star, play golf 4 times a week. And our ambition is to have our employees as passionate about the business that they work in as we are. There's no greater feeling, I can tell you, as an employer, to see someone come in, work for you, then they cobble together the money and they buy a house and then they have a kid, and we have played some small part in that.
Yeah.
That's something to be proud of.
It's almost in a way, it obviously it's a business hotel, but it's almost like kind of like a college in a way. If we would be right in saying that, for your employees, it's like it's a job, but it's more than just a job. It's like an education as well.
Well, yeah, we hope that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do talks in schools and I remind them over and over again that by the time they leave retirement, it'll be 85. It won't be where we are now. You know, it's going to be pushed up. Don't listen to any politician. And it's really important you get a job that will say something about you, but you enjoy coming into work. And we try our best to make sure that those, you know, we cover those areas that add to an employee's life.
Excellent. Yeah. Let's see. So just So you we're talking basically about your team, how you manage your team, and you often hear advice such as basically make sure people that support you bring out the best in you, which you bring out the best in each other. How vital has your team been to your success and the business success as a whole?
Well, it's hugely successful. I mean, there's employees, which I think I've covered, and with them we have a management team who and then we have a board of directors, and you get inspiration from every department there. So those people are hugely important to giving you inspiration to move on. I think that's as best I can cover it.
That's grand. let's see. So basically, at the moment, you open up the second hotel, which is Bullet,
Mhm.
and if I'm right with my geography, it's nearby, isn't it?
Mhm.
Around the corner.
Church
And
Lane.
Church Lane, and you open up the second Bullet in
Dublin.
Dublin. Basically, just touch that. How different when you decided to open up that second hotel? What was the plan with that compared to obviously you have the merchant? Was it the kind of come at a different angle with the Bullet compared to the merchant? Or?
Yeah, Bullet's aimed at a different clientele, a younger clientele, a clientele that don't want turn downs, slippers put by the side of their bed, chocolates, all that sort of thing. It's aimed at a 25 to 45-year-old age group. That would be our target market, and those above that age or below that age hopefully will feel comfortable. So, and that's been very, very successful. We're now, for various reasons, we own a lot in a very small, 1.6 million people live here, and we appeal to a small section of that market, and we have the horrors of Brexit.
Yeah.
So we decided two things. We were thinking of moving outside Nolan, and Brexit accelerated our thinking. So we've gone to Dublin. We found we're going north of the river, where we advise not to go, and nobody goes north of the river. And we found a street called Capel Street, which is one of the oldest streets in Dublin. It doesn't have any Neros or Starbucks, chains of any description. It's a mixture of a couple of gay bars, antique shops, Korean supermarkets, Japanese supermarkets. There's a couple of porn shops. There's a pawn shop, and there's also behind that a vibrant community. And we think that it could be one of the up and coming areas in Dublin. We were absolutely adamant that we were not going to Temple Bar, where you get all the Irish hotels and bars. So we think that this could be an area that there's already green shoots. There's a couple of little restaurants that are outstanding, and we're hoping that we will be the catalyst for more change in that area.
And draw in other businesses like your Neros and Starbucks.
Well, I don't want Neros. No,
Okay.
no, I don't want Neros, and I don't want Starbucks. I think that one of the reasons that you visit any city is to find a form of individualism that only thrives in that city, and that's definitely what Capel Street is about.
Okay.
I would adamantly put my vote against any of the big chains, and we're hoping that ultimately, tourists will come along, the locals will come along, and will enjoy what will become an even more vibrant area than it is now. Don't forget, when I came here, the PSNI told me that 15 years ago the footfall was 50 people on a Saturday night, and it's now 10,000. So we're hoping that while we don't see growth like that in Dublin, we hope we find an amazing building in a laneway. The laneway serves these three buildings. It's been shut for nearly 100 years. We're opening that up again and showing the people of Dublin three absolutely stunning historic buildings.
And I'm right in saying the building that the second building that's going to be built in Dublin used to be the headquarters for the River Dance?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
it is.
Excellent. So it's building on that. I suppose it's what you've done here. It's almost like kind of replicating that down Dublin, like the cathedral quarters fairly came on in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
Various businesses, whereas 15 years ago there was nothing much really. So it's
Well, we're hoping that we'll be able to replicate that.
excellent. Sorry, it's
Yeah, you must be finished now.
they were in the head. It's good. Oh.
Good.
So you mentioned in the last answer talked about Brexit, and your business obviously had to make plans for that. Basically, Brexit's dominating the news at the moment. Possibly a no-deal Brexit, and also here at home, our country recently passed the unofficial accord has been declared over Belgium as the longest country without a government in peacetime. How's the current political scene impacted your business and your future plans? I know you obviously regards to the second bullet, but how's that affected you as a whole?
Well, the Brexit thing, I was on the board of Remain, so it should, I thought that was right for us for so many reasons, which I could spend another hour talking about. But basically, I thought the vision of us belonging to Europe was worthy, and I think economically it made sense. We have here probably about 50% of our workforce are from Ireland, which is more than most hotels, and the rest come from everywhere under the sun, but particularly from Eastern Europe. And overnight, that has dried up, and that presents us with problems. You can have the Nigel Farage view that locals will always do this work, and they won't. It's a simple fact, they won't. Ultimately, we may get more and more locals coming in, but we need these workers. So that was bad. The fact that we've no government means there's no form of modernisation, no decisions are being taken on anything, from policing to, in our own industry, licensing hours, to the disparity in VAT between us and the Republic, to social changes. So there's that's all just, there's a form of inertia has come over everything, and that is not good for us. The business is not good for us as a society. So hugely problematic, and it's yet again a case of our politicians. I mean, my personal wish is that our politicians, who for historic reasons are weighed down by bigotries from the past, that they will, a new, more modern voter who is not looking to the past but looking to the future will never forgive them if they don't do a deal that benefits the people of not only the 6 counties but the whole of Ireland. And we are in a unique position that we can, we're being offered a deal that enables us to stay within the EU and trade with the EU and the world. It's a no-brainer that we should take up that option, and yet, petty prejudices, bigotries, xenophobia, seems to have stymied any form of sensible thinking by our politicians.
It's kind of pretty much like a narrow-minded view that's kind of just kept them from seeing, as you say, from seeing the bigger picture. They have all the political foresight of blind Bart. It's sad. Let's see. So, just going on from that, how do you see it all going? Are you optimistic with regards to where we're heading, or are you cautious, or maybe even pessimistic?
Well, look, I'm optimistic. It's with my nature. I'm optimistic. I think most people are, but I would put this proviso on that. Through all the troubles, I knew that we were always, a better people, and we deserve more, and we would move forward. And I've met so many amazing people in this country who refused to give in to any form of prejudice or bigotry, despite coming under tremendous pressure. I have to say now I'm probably more depressed than I was in the Troubles, because the prize is there. It can be it can be won for all the people of this province, for our children going forward. It depresses me that we're still stuck with the same politicians who 40 years ago, when I was opening my bar, are still there. Still rabbiting on about how this is either going to bring down the union if we do this, or it'll set back, a form of United Ireland, and all those things that were predicted, particularly on the union side, that would be the end of the union. You had to fight tooth and nail for. Every one of them were granted, and not one of them made the union any weaker. In fact, probably strengthened them. And I think it's depressing that that cannot be recognised, that we're still held back by people who are weighed down by the past.
Yeah. So, with the current...
I've probably said enough now to get me any marches and protests everywhere.
No, you're grand. It's okay. We're nearly finished, sorry. So, with the current uncertainty, it's very easy for people to be maybe they're watching this or they're at home and they maybe thought, wouldn't mind starting a business or getting in the business. And maybe with the uncertainty that's creating a fear or a kind of a paralysis of decision. What advice would you give if someone's maybe wanting to start a business but they're scared to take that step forward?
I'm always reluctant to
Okay.
give advice. I used to say never stroke a burning dog.
Okay.
But I think if somebody has a passion to become self-employed and the particular area that they want to move into, they feel they can offer something that isn't currently on offer,
Yeah.
that they can beat the opposition on, then I would say absolutely, follow your dream.
Yeah. So
And you nobody wants a life full of regrets. I think that eats away at you.
yeah. So in short, that's you're pretty much saying if you have a passion about something and you have
You're knowledgeable
knowledgeable about it
on that
and you
subject.
can see an angle where I can do it better than X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
then obviously just
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could live with
Yeah.
what if.
What ifs?
Yeah.
I mean, and if you follow my history, I'm not particularly talented. I just can sort of spot an opportunity, work hard on. It's not rocket science. Just keep a simple philosophy
Yeah.
and work hard.
Work hard. See. Going on from that, I know you've touched on this quite a bit. Big business success. Maybe going over all ground game. What makes it, in your opinion, what does make a successful businessman or woman? Maybe we've already answered that, but
I think we have.
Okay. So basically, going into your charity work, we mentioned at the start you do work for a charity, Start 360, and Myware. How did you get involved with these charities?
The Start 360, I've been doing talks in prisons, and I've been working with ex-paramilitaries, community groups. We'd sponsored so many things, and I was asked would I come along and do the Start 360. I was with them before, and it was Opportunity Youth and Myware, because I suffer from the illness. They asked me to be representative of them. So I, as an individual, know myself now. I'm not designed to sit on boards. I've been asked to do that with various charities. I don't like doing that. I get bored with boards.
Yeah.
But I like going out and talking to people who come from the areas that I do and have not been as lucky as I have, and I find it hugely rewarding. To be honest, I really enjoy that more as much as anything, and if we have a society where a sizable section are disenfranchised, it's not good for all of us. So if I or this company can make a small contribution to bettering the lives of those people, that improves our lives as well.
Yeah.
And it makes us feel good, it makes me feel good about me.
Yeah.
So I get a lot out of it.
Do you often find when you meet people who maybe have had pretty much a very rough start in their life or a rough life up to date, do you often find once someone like yourself, you kind of maybe for the first time in their lives get that kind of glimmer of what their possibility is? Do you find they normally receptive of that?
Yeah, maybe that would be the dream. That, but some regard you as an old wanker. You know, coming on here rabbiting on about what you've done. But I try my best not to present that and to show that it's a simple formula to perceived success. But my talks are a lot about my father. I quite often quote my mother. My dad was a tradesman, my mother did menial jobs, and they educated us, did their best to educate me, put food on our table, give us an understanding of what was better in life. My mother particularly told me, you know, she saw something in me, and you don't need to be an employer to get that form of recognition. That is something that's equally as rewarding as what I do. So the talk, you know, I try to say that a job is a job, and it says more about you than anything else. And who demands the most praise? Me, who swans around talking to people like you, and my dad, Mum, who did jobs they didn't enjoy all their lives, but stuck to it because they wanted to do something for a generation comes below. I think the choice is easy to see who demands the most praise, and on the back of that, hopefully, you know, a few people pick up that and move on.
Perhaps like a selfless service.
It's not selfless, but I'll tell you why it's not selfless. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I get a lot out of it. Now, most people that I know, apart from maybe a few saints, they do things that they enjoy doing. Yeah. And I enjoy talking to these people, and I think it contributes. So I get a lot out of it.
So just the last question we ask everybody is, what advice would you give your younger self if you could go back and do that?
Right, that's a good question. It's not in my makeup to be patient, and probably because of that, we've been able to move forward constantly. But I think my advice would be to be a little bit more patient, and to absolutely not stress as much as I always do. Yeah. The amount of sleep I've lost, and I've now come to the conclusion after many years in business that if you give something your best shot and it doesn't happen, it was never meant to be. So if I could give my younger self advice, it would be to listen to that voice, and if it doesn't happen, it wasn't meant to be.
Just basically do your best, and then as long as you know you've done your best, just leave it there.
Forget it. Okay. Because I have chased things endlessly, and quite often when you do get that, whatever it is you've been chasing, it wasn't the right thing anyway. Most of my good deals have been done quickly and quietly and without problems. They always seem to be the best deals.
Okay, no worries. Bill, thank you very much for your time today, and thanks very much for doing the interview and answering your questions, and wish you all the best in the future. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.